I work here in the University Technology Office, and I'm going to start us off on this at the start just by level setting with everybody. What is a smart campus and a smart city anyways? So here at ASU, we've been working on this for actually quite some time. And when we started, we really tried to formulate kind of a mission statement around how we wanted to approach our approach to kind of a smart campus and a smart city. And I think we really captured that well here by saying that our smart campus efforts are to enhance the safety and well-being of our students and constituents. They foster compassion for the communities we serve, promote the ethical use of data, and focus on inclusivity and digital equity with a focus to drive sustainable results. So when we look to what does it mean to be a smart city, these are kind of those founding roots that we are really kind of growing from. Another way I like to think about what does it mean for a smart city or a smart campus. What does that really entail? What that entails is trying to digitize the analog world in which we live, so that we can unlock the potential and the promise of a smart city, campus, and region. So how can we take this space in which we reside? How can we capture information from that so that we can, programmatically make smarter decisions, actually engage with the world around us through new interfaces, and really unlock that potential that we've all been hearing about. Well, one of the things we're going to need to make this happen is a whole new network. That the days of just having the landline Wi-Fi are pretty much gone. Nowadays, when we talk about how are we going to move all of this data from building sensors, from cars, from individuals, that type of network is going to be highly diversified. You can see here that there's going to be BLE, there's going to be things like LoRa, 5G, private LTE, Wi-Fi. There's going to be a whole strata of network technologies that is going to allow us to connect all of these sensors across the university. So how do we capture that data in those analog spaces? So now that we have this network that's highly diversitized, that we can be passing data through, we're looking at now ways of how can we capture information about the world we live in. And so one of those efforts that you see here, this is the picture on your right is of a blue light pole at our research park facility, where we're starting to deploy the little crown on top of that is actually a a LiDAR device that actively pings out through laser beams and acts a lot like sonar in that it can actually identify and map the location of the physical objects around it and do it in a real-time fashion. Now that we're gathering data, we now have this network, we now have a way to collect digitized data from an analog space. We also need to be able to route that into the physical world in which we live. And so one of the ways we do this is through GIS, or graphical information systems. So here we actually take data and we're adding that lat long component, that height component to it, so that now that data physically has that location tag to reside within the world in which we live. Voice. What does voice got to do with smart cities? Well, voice like the Alexa that you have in your house is just one of those gateways by which we are engaging with the environment around us. I know I use mine to turn on and off lights, the TV. So we are now also creating this interface through voice, through mobile apps, through other technologies, through smart kiosks by also allowing the constituents and the users of a smart city to engage with all of this information, these data, these systems as well. And then finally, how can we harness all of this to make better decision making within real time, draw that data, finding the right things to take a look at. Here is an example of a dashboard that when we had football games in those good old days, we had an IoT kind of showcase within the CIO suite. And you can see here, we could display water sweet, this sweet water usage. So, you know, we had sensors in the pipe that track the flow of water. We had capacity within the recycling and the trash cans. We had sensors on seats that showed in real time which ones they were being occupied. So we're now collecting that data. We're visualizing that data so that we can start to actually act on it. Finally, our goal here at ASU is not just to solve problems at ASU, but how can we do this in such a way that we can scale beyond just having a smart campus to residing within a smart city. The Phoenix metro area, all of the governors have engaged in this smart region. So how can we all work together so that we don't just have pockets of smart scattered throughout our whole Phoenix metropolitan, but we can solve grand solutions to make the entire metro smart? And how can we continue, because ASU has a vast footprint across states, to other parts of the country, to the world, to the universe and beyond. So I hope that kind of provides a little bit of, you know, texture and color to what is a smart campus. And now I'm going to give this over to Alex to talk a little bit more about the problem and the opportunities we're facing with a smart fleet. Alex is so kind. He's actually joining us today from vacation. So he's only going to be able to join by voice, but he has promised that he's going to be speaking only in haikus, and that this is a bit of a disappointment because he had led us to believe he was going to do his part of the presentation in interpretive dance. But unfortunately, we're just left with haikus today. So Alex, I turn it over to you.
I did try to format this speech in a 5-7-5 routine, and that's not going to be able to happen. I just ran out of time. Hey, I apologize. There is a little bit of a spotty connectivity as I'm driving. So if there's any problems here, just Bobby, just give me a heads up. So here, about 2.5 years ago, we met with President Crow to kind of go back over reimagining our sustainability goals, and we have 8 of them. They're on the website if for those of you who haven't read them. But one of them that really sticks out is climate positivity, and that means that we want to eliminate our carbon footprint, but we want to actually give back. We want to take in and sequester carbon. We want to do a bunch of different things, and we were able to successfully achieve that on the electricity side last year. Where we really struggle is on the emissions that are coming from the vehicles, all the interactions we have. And we own a fleet of a little over 800 vehicles. A lot of those are low speed electric vehicle golf carts, but we still have a couple hundred sedans, the people movers out there that are highway legal. And the president said right then and there, I remember we were in Armstrong Hall, said, you know, no more gasoline vehicles. I want only electrics at this point. And we said, well, that's not a snap of the finger decision that we can make, because we don't know what our vehicle mix is. And the National Resource Defense Fund says that an electric vehicle on average costs $19,000 more than a gasoline powered one. On top of that, you have to have charging station infrastructure, and that infrastructure can cost anywhere from $5,000, and if you have to upgrade transformers and feeders, to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And these vehicles, we don't really know where they are because each department is allowed to manage them themselves. We had a centralized fleet at one point, but we figured out it was really inefficient for people to have to come over to one location, check out keys, check out a vehicle every time they wanted to go somewhere, especially now that the density of campus has increased, where there's really no parking central to campus at this point. So we sat there and we were trying to figure out ways to manage this. And I can say the best and greenest thing you can do is to not have to use the resource at all, if you can eliminate it from the portfolio. So kind of the first objective is, how do we not convert cars by simply eliminating them? And we believe there are a lot out of there, but there's just no data for that. And then the second part is, where can we put them in the most optimal location for people to make their walking to that vehicle as efficient as possible, but also to cluster enough of them so we only have to put charging stations in a couple key locations, which would allow us to really eliminate a lot of that infrastructure build out and really only focus on key areas. So the per unit cost of those charging stations would really be reduced and really be more effective for the university. And then finally, how can we co-use resources? And we have a bunch of different departments. Everybody's fully aware that ASU is not this homogeneous organization, but it's a very heterogeneous organization. And how do you take that heterogeneous organization and share resources such as a vehicle, so we can kind of gauge those coincidences when multiple people want to drive the same vehicle and have the right amount of resources in the right location to effectively service our university community and not interrupt operations. And so we looked at a bunch of different options, and there are a bunch of subscription services out there where we could have got data loggers. We looked at a bunch of fleet management software where we could log everything in. But at the end of the day, everything became incredibly cost prohibitive and was going to make it almost impossible to execute this. And to put it in context, if we just wanted to convert our gasoline fleet to an electric fleet today, it would cost us $20 million. We haven't even installed a charging station at this point in the conversation at $20 million. That's just buying the vehicles. So then on top of that, you add charging infrastructure, which could range anywhere from $5 to another $25 million. And then on top of that, you have to have the management capability to do all that. So we've got to buy software packages, and we've got to buy we've got to change some of our utility rate structures with the utility. We're talking a $50 million problem that we're looking at right now, with really no resources that have been identified to support this. So that at that point, it's time to start engaging some really smart people in the industry and ask the question of, what can IoT do to enable us to be successful? How can we change this? And I should add that all this is happening in the middle of COVID, when driving patterns have completely and radically changed for what we think is a shortened period of time, but we're not sure. They may change forever. I don't think they'll be the same as 2020, but they may not ever be the same as 2019 either. So to figure all that out, the guy who wears the best vest at ASU, Bobby Gray, and I were talking about it. He mentioned the Cox Collaboratory, and we started talking to our partners there at Cox. And I think those fantastic 100-pound heads over there had a couple of great ideas, and that's where we really started to get momentum to solve this problem, not just in a cost-effective way, but a really environmentally friendly way. So with that, I'll high five my buddy Jake and let him take over.
That's right. Speaking of 100-pound heads and smart guys, here is Jake from the Cox Collaboratory to talk about how we're viewing going about solving this problem. Take it away, Jake.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Alex. My name is Jake Huber. I'm Bobby's counterpart as the director of the Cox Connected Environments Collaboratory at ASU. It's it's like an innovation studio where we're working on building new IoT solutions to help build the smart campus and smart cities of the future, and to commercialize that shared intellectual property. So part of a group with Cox, and at Cox, we believe that transportation will change more in this decade than the last 50 years combined. So our opportunity here is to define, shape, and support the emerging mobility ecosystem with technology and services that will enable a better transportation future. And for us, that's an ACES fleet future we talk about. So one that is automated by continued advancements in autonomy, connectivity, electrification, and sharing. You can go to the next slide, please. So that brings us to today. The opportunity with ASU and creating a smart fleet management solution for universities comes in a couple of phases. So the needs and the goals that came from that Alex just walked through. So that's to reduce the size of the fleet, to increase resource utilization rates, and ultimately make that conversion to electric more affordable. So today, ASU's fleet is distributed. It's operated and maintained by several separate groups. And with, the first step here is to get those cars connected, to start to understand the utilization there. So with ASU, we start with connecting and tracking the fleet of just around 750 vehicles to start to calculate and measure utilization trends. But that only enables the following phases. So we start with the connecting and tracking, and we believe the real opportunity for innovation is to help build a smart solution that activates that ACES future for other cities and universities. And at ASU, we can start with the S, so that's sharing. So a smart sharing and reservation platform that also allows us to map costs back to the right department. That'll give us the ability to right size the fleet based on current utilization and make the transition to electric more efficient and affordable. At least that's the hypothesis that we have. If we're able to take this distributed fleet, share those resources, we're going to be able, like Alex said, there are likely cars out there that aren't being utilized either at all or just not to the level where you need it full time within a department. So there's that opportunity to create that shared platform to be able to reserve cars accessed across different departments. And then our work doesn't have to stop there. With ASU on this journey towards a fully electric fleet, we can work together to create a solution that is built for fully connected vehicles. Like most cars now that are coming off the line they have an embedded SIM. They're connected cars, especially when you talk about electric cars. There's that embedded technology. So building a fleet solution for that fully connected fleet and for electric fleets of the future. You can go to the next slide. So I'll call it phase 0, right? It's connecting and tracking the vehicles. This is like the data that will enable us to understand how vehicles in the fleet are being utilized, which ones we could potentially decommission and offload from the fleet, and start to understand at peak times what a sharing application would allow us to do. So we're starting with a solution that we already have that we're using with other customers, with dealerships actually, for inventory management. And taking that and allowing us to track the vehicles and then take that information and provide it back to Alex and the facilities team and other groups to get a visual map of where all the vehicles are, to double click in and look at individual trip history and analytics around that trip. And then even start to look at, creating custom geofences and different rules, and should a car be parked here or not be parked there. So giving that basic functionality and allowing us to start to gather the data to measure and track how cars are being used, where they're going, who they're being used by, etc. So that is our first phase and V1. And then the last piece that I'll cover is more of the higher level timeline through the end of this year. So starting ideally as soon as next month with that first phase of connecting all the vehicles, creating that those initial dashboard views and starting to capture the data to measure utilization. moving into Q3, or I guess it would be your Q1, into the fall, starting to share like those early utilization trends. And then in parallel, once we start to have that information and we're working more closely with like the fleet team and the fleet manager and understanding what the needs are, start to build out that phase 2 work, which is the sharing platform. So really understanding how cars are being used, which departments are using them, how to map those costs back. And then really starting as we move forward there, developing a solution around a sharing platform. And then that phase 3 is as we start to build that out, what's next? What else could we start to tackle around this fleet that's going to be converting to electric? What does a fleet management solution look like for that fleet of the future, which ASU is going to be creating? So yeah, that's how we're thinking about it.
And with that, I know we're a little bit over time on the presentation, so we will quickly kick this back to Marissa to facilitate the SOAR.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. And certainly not having much experience in that area, it's very enlightening to see just all the cool stuff happening in different departments. So I'm going to send a link through the chat. And I will spare you kind of the SOAR overview because I think we've heard it a few times now. But I want to just be able to go through a few quick reminders. We're keeping in mind that SOAR is not like the SWOT analysis that tends to focus on weakness and threats. We're looking at more of an appreciative conversational approach, which is really cool, especially when talking about something that's so not really on, not on everyone's radar, I think. So to get us started, let's see, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share this screen. We are a small but mighty group at 38 participants. So what I am hopeful is that you have the option to go ahead and type right in the slide. Or we can share, we can talk through it. So based on what Alex, Jake, and Bobby have gone over with us, what do you see as some of the strengths in this experience that they shared to create a smart fleet? What are some strengths? And again, just what are we good at? What are our dynamic capabilities? Does anyone want to share or start typing right in there? So some of the things that I picked up on, I'll just get us started. Our strengths are that we're able to scale. We have the skill sets and the teamwork and the willingness to support this type of endeavor. We have a partnership. I think that's a great start too, because not everything falls on our shoulders. So that's definitely a strength. Can anyone identify anything else as a strength? You can also look at how are we contributing to the mission and the vision. And I believe it was either Bobby or Alex at the very beginning talked about the pillars for sustainability. And we have commitments to that. So again, that's a strength. How are we moving towards that goal? And then an opportunity. This is the opportunity for this, this endeavor seemed pretty great. What do we see as possibilities and how can we add more value to our customers? So they definitely walked us and talked us through some of the experiences that they're having. How do we, identify vehicles that aren't being used, that can be used? And that sounds like that was a step 0, just to first identify that. So that's a really important, I think, start for an opportunity. And how do we communicate with all these departments even to gain that insight? So aspirations, I think Bobby took us all the way to the universe with this one. So that was a little overwhelming. I thought, wow, we're really going for it. But that's actually the point of this area of the analysis. Like, where do you actually want to end up? And that's where people who have those big picture capabilities really essentially soar, if you will, because if someone's able to map that out for us, and then we have people in place that can help us get there, that's, I think, where it's truly beneficial. So it creates really functional teams that not everyone has to be good at one thing. We need to be good at different things and come together to make those aspirations come true. So what are our dreams and wishes? What is our preferred future? Again, going back to the mission and going back to what is our overarching goal with something, you know, this type of endeavor. And then finally, with the results, what is a meaningful outcome? So that's an amazing one right there. Reduce carbon emissions from the ASU fleet. So that's our first meaningful outcome. What are our key performance indicators? How do we know that we're doing well with this? How do we know that it's a worthwhile venture? We're not spending more than, you know, the gains that we're receiving from it. And what data will help us identify that? How do we learn and evolve towards our vision, you know, ASU, city, state, you know, country, as we work our way up? And how do we know we're meeting an intended impact? So go ahead and fill it in. I'm going to start just talking briefly through some of the strengths. I agree the partnership is definitely a strength, and it's a step in the right direction towards ASU sustainability goals. You now don't even have to, you know, leave your office to grab lunch. There's, you know, little robots that will bring it to you. So there's lots of these projects happening, and it's all towards a sustainability goal. So some opportunities, vast knowledge base at ASU and Cox utilize. So it's almost like we don't know what we don't know, right? You have to collaborate and you have to brainstorm over these types of things to see what the opportunities are, what the possibilities are, and how do we get more value, you know, for the fleet, for utilization of our resources, right? And the way we can do that is collaboration. For aspirations, use this process in other areas. I think that's one of the main benefits of why we're here today. We have all sorts of departments coming together and really, you know, hearing each other's stories and finding ways that we can apply these successes in our own departments and in our own spaces. You know, I certainly don't run a fleet of smart vehicles, but I can take some of those steps and those skills to work that I do within the Teachers College. Create new partnerships with auto manufacturers to help ASU achieve goals. Expanding our network is never a bad thing, right? Let's see, create smart universe. Yes, that was my favorite aspiration for sure. Results, so reduce carbon emissions for the ASU fleet, reduce time to get to places we need to be. That's interesting because again, how do we get there, right? Like that's a future thing, and how do we measure for that? Change in behavior. This is most interesting because I think in 2019, no one ever thought that anyone can run an entire university from home, or you know, just the milestones that we met in 2020. So there's definitely a change in behavior in that. What are the possibilities? And that's what's so cool about this experience. And more efficient capital asset inventory processing. Who wrote that one? I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Efficient capital asset inventory processing, like tracking of the assets, or?
That was me. Yes, it is tracking assets. My first job at ASU was actually running capital asset inventory, and as soon as I jumped in this breakout room, that's what popped into my head. This would have been a lifesaver back then.
Right, and I'm sure no one thought it was possible, or you know, or anything like that, and here we are. That's great, Josh. Thank you. Looks like we're adding a few more. Efficiency. This is definitely something that would be so helpful in this space, but also so many others in areas that we're working, right? We talked about ASU having so many different, very heterogeneous environment where there's so many different independent, you know, units. And if we're able to share these experiences and create some level of efficiency, you know, processes to follow, I think that's an absolute aspiration. Does anyone have anything they want to unmute and add and share?
Just a
Thank
big
you
thank
for-
you to you.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you did a great
Thank you.
job here walking everybody through this. Couldn't have done it without
Thank you. We've got 45 seconds. Any questions for Bobby, Jake, or Alex? I think that'll do it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time, your
Thanks.
effort, and your participation today. Thank you very much.